A man asks for a second cup of coffee, and a marriage unravels. A war hero flashbacks to a disco floor. A child offers coffee with the confidence of a CEO. And somewhere in the chaos, someone definitely picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue. This week on Real Beans, we're diving nose first into one of the most quotable, outrageous, and surprisingly layered comedies ever made, Airplane. We'll talk about what makes this 1980 spoof still soar in 2025, how parody is harder than it looks, and why serious actors in ridiculous roles might be comedic genius. We'll also brew a nostalgic cup of Yuban coffee, the kind that sparks memories at the breakfast table. So stick around for absurd humor, sharp wit, and maybe even a cameo from Ethel Merman. This episode is for anyone who's ever taken their coffee black. Hey there, I'm Ben Schneider, and this is Real Beans, where we sip slow, talk deep, and take another look at the films and flavors that linger long after the credits roll. This podcast lives in the space in between the moments that make us pause, feel, remember. So whether it's bold and brooding or smooth and nostalgic, you can always count on one thing. We sip, we watch, we repeat. I'll be honest with you. Airplane might be one of the most quoted films of all time, and I'm absolutely guilty of keeping that tradition alive. My dad, my brother, and I still trade lines from it like currency. Don't call me Shirley. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit. Well, fill in your own vice. My brother and I especially speak in full scenes like we're performing a rival of the movie. It's part of our shorthand. An airplane never fails to make me chuckle. But why does it work? It's relentless. Jokes fly by faster than Otto the automatic pilot. Blink, and you've missed three. Sometimes you're laughing so hard, you miss the even better punchline seconds later. The ZAZ trio, Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker, didn't just create a comedy, they engineered a joke per minute machine. And the film doesn't just spoof one thing, it borrows heavily from Zero Hour, a 1957 serious drama, and pokes fun at 1970s disaster films like Airport and Airport 75. Commercials like the infamous Yuban Coffee ad, Jim never has a second cup at home, news commentary, gender roles, and even kids in adult situations. It's a mashup of cultural absurdities dressed up as chaos in the sky. Sure, some of the jokes are crude, callous even, but the pace is so fast that before you can react, you're onto something else. That said, Airplane absolutely includes material that hasn't aged well. There are jokes at the expense of women, various cultures, gay men, and even nuns. But the film just doesn't punch down, it punches everywhere. Everyone's game. And that's part of its bizarre charm. It's satire that scorches the earth, not one specific group. One of the brilliance in the film is the casting of dramatic leading men from the 1950s and 60s. Leslie Nielsen, Peter Graves, Lloyd Bridges, and Robert Stack. All of them commit so hard to their roles that it's often the sincerity that makes the scenes so hilarious. Nielsen became a comedic icon after this. With the Naked Gun trilogy, I too have a soft spot for 33 and a third, though nothing quite matched his performance here. And yes, there were lesser attempts like Mr. Magoo, but Nielsen always had a moment or two to remind you why he became the king of straight-faced comedy. And I'm sure there are fans of Mr. Magoo out there, and that's fine. You're allowed to enjoy what you like. The central crisis in the cockpit plot is a sweet and goofy romantic story. Ted Stryker and Elaine Dickinson, played by Robert Hayes and Julie Haggerty, whose relationship is on the rocks due to Ted's unresolved PTSD from the war. The flashbacks are some of the best parts of the film. A Saturday Night Fever disco dancing, absurd jungle missionary work, and a hospital montage capped by a surprise cameo from Ethel Merman. Some of my favorite scenes are actually throwaway bits, like the counterpoint TV commentator that says, Shayna, they bought their tickets. They knew what they were getting into. I say, let 'em crash. It's so dark, it's such a perfect parody of news pundit sensationalism. Then there's a scene with two kids dressed like executives. One offers the other coffee and then cream, and she deadpans, "No, thank you. I take it black. Like my men." It's inappropriate, yes, but the deadpan delivery and the absurdity make it one of those lines that just shocks you into laughter, especially because the kids themselves likely, or maybe not, have no clue what they're saying. And then there's Johnny, hilariously played by Steve Stucker, in the control tower at the airport. It is arguably the best and most quotable character in the film. "There's a sale at Penny's!" And, of course, Lloyd Bridges' escalating stress montage. "Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking, drinking, amphetamines, sniffing glue." Even the small gags shine. Robert Stack's Captain Kramer karate chopping his way through airport evangelists is so over the top that it's comedy gold. We've all had a moment of wanting to dodge someone trying to hand us a pamphlet. We just don't do it with a flying elbow. Now, as with any older film, Airplane has its share of issues. The most discussed scene in recent years involves the two black characters speaking jive, with subtitles translating their slang. It toes the line between satire and stereotype. Personally, I don't see the moment as malicious, but I also acknowledge it is not my place to judge the impact. But how clever and absurd it is to bring out Barbara Billingsley, who famously played the straight-laced mother on Leave It to Beaver, come up and say that she speaks jive and translates. What follows is an argument between the two men and her about how she isn't speaking the language correctly, and shoo her away. What's worth noting is that the actors, Al White and Norman Alexander Gibbs, reworked the scenes themselves. The ZAZ team had written something entirely different, but when White and Gibbs auditioned with their version, the filmmakers cast them immediately and gave them the space to improvise. It's an example of when creators listen, when humor is built with, not just about. Since Airplane, only a handful of parodies were successful: Hot Shots, Top Secret, Austin Powers, and a few of Mel Brooks' classics. And even Scary Movie, the first one, had moments. Far too often the genre falls into lazy imitation that rely on cultural references instead of real satire. Epic Movie or Meet the Spartans. They bank on recognition, and that's what makes Airplane so special. It's tightly written, with a screenplay nominated for a Golden Globe and a BAFTA award. It doesn't just reference, it reimagines. And the audiences showed up for it. It grossed over $6 million in its first 5 days back in 1980, more than $15 million in today's money. That's not just a good parody, that's box office gold. There was a sequel that didn't have the involvement of the ZAZ team, Airplane 2: The Sequel, where they take the comedy into space. It's not as good, but still worth a watch for the fans. Robert Hayes and Julie Haggerty return, and William Shatner steals the scenes with that perfect overbaked Shatner style. I've probably seen Airplane more than 20 times, and it still lands for me in 2025. Some of the references are dated, sure. Some of the jokes sting a little bit more now, but it's still hilarious. And that's because everyone involved committed to their bit. Even the unnamed extras deliver comedy with full force. If you're new to the film and want to explore what it parodied, here's your watch list: 0 Hour, Airport from 1970, Airport from 1975, Saturday Night Fever, From Here to Eternity, and many more. You may cringe at some parts, but you'll laugh at most. And if nothing else, it'll remind you that sometimes you have to laugh at yourself to survive the long flight. You can watch Airplane on Amazon Prime or rent it on Apple TV. Let's talk Yuban, a name that might not show up in your favorite pour-over cafe, but one that's been part of American kitchens for over a century. Founded in 1906 by John Arbuckle, Yuban positioned itself early as one of the premium canned coffees. It was one of the first widely distributed coffees to highlight 100% Colombian beans, marketed for homebrewers who wanted something a little more gourmet without leaving the house. Its biggest pop culture moment came in the 1970s, with a commercial that stuck in America's brain. The joke, rooted in middle-class coffee rituals, was so iconic that Airplane borrowed it directly in one of the film's best commercial parodies. So naturally, I brewed some Yuban this week, using my Aiden Fellow Drip coffee maker. And the results? Mixed. My first try was far too weak and watered down, so I tried again. My second cup was so strong it could fly a plane solo. My third try was much closer to what I normally enjoy. It was more balanced, though still pretty bold for my usual tastes. Yuban, like its grocery store sibling, Folgers, is designed for predictable consistency. That's one of its key appeals. You don't have to fiddle with a grind setting, or measure out a custom brew ratio. Want a 4-cup pot? Scoop it, pour it, hit the switch. The grind is calibrated to work with most standard drip machines, and for a lot of folks, that's all they want at 7 a.m. There's also the equipment factor. Grinding your own beans usually means investing in a burr grinder, learning about which grind size works best based on your brewing method, or how to store everything to preserve freshness. For many, that can be a daunting and momentous task, especially when you're just looking for some quick caffeine. It's not about the gourmet taste, it's about keeping the ritual simple and approachable. Flavor-wise, my Yuban had strong chicory and woodsy notes, a deep roast with a bite, not brightness. It's not subtle, but it's not bad either. If you're drinking it within a week of opening the can, the difference from fresh ground beans may not even be that noticeable. A lot of casual coffee drinkers still find it quite drinkable, and even publications like Thrill List admitted that brands like Maxwell House and Yuban hold up surprisingly well in blind taste tests. A Reddit comment summed it up quite nicely. Maybe it's a nostalgia, familiarity thing too. And honestly, I get it. There's comfort in knowing exactly what your cup will taste like, just like there's comfort in rewatching a film like Airplane for the 20th time. You know all the words, but you still laugh anyway. While there's real flavor and freshness to be gained from grinding premium beans, there's nothing wrong with being pragmatic. Yuban remains popular because it hits the sweet spot for morning routines. And in a way, that's how things in life work best. Predictably reliable with just enough kick. Kind of like a good parody, or a classic comedy routine that never quits. Next time on Real Beans, we'll go back to an era when computers filled entire rooms, but it was still human nature that powered communication and work. We'll spotlight two of the greatest acting duos from the silver screen, Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, and talk about how their chemistry and charm created timeless performances. Our coffee pairing? A bold, complex blend with serious flair, Hairbender by Stumptown, perfect for a film that explores both logic and love. Thank you for spending time with me here on Real Beans. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with your fellow film or coffee lovers. Every little bit helps this cozy community grow. You can find show notes, blog posts, and more coffee and cinema goodness at realbeans.com. Support the podcast by going to realbeans/support and follow along on Instagram at realbeans. Until next time, keep sipping, stay curious, and don't call me Shirley.